Okay,
Bring
let's get started.
We have 30 State Street here today. They have an application for a replacement of windows, a photovoltaics array on the roof, a replacement of roof shingles, and a new AC unit in the rear of the property. So essentially 4 items that you have to deal with today.
An item to add, this was before the board, I think, 3 months ago, and was discussed briefly. I don't think we actually had a quorum that night, but there was a discussion. And then they came back, they revised their application. So it's now before, and we have a quorum tonight. So that makes it all the better.
Good. Stuart, is it necessary to do roll call or happens automatically?
I think we've got it. We see that we've got a full quorum here, so we are good to go, and you can call the meeting and get it off to the races.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Mr. Young. It's nice to see in person. You had reached out to me about National Register listing, and perhaps after we're done talking about the application, you can update the group on the status of your efforts in that regard. But let's dive right into the application. Jaime Martinez, our planning director, summarized the various aspects of the application. The application is voluminous, and I want to make sure that we know exactly which aspects of the application we need to make a decision on, and you're seeking our approval for. As you may know, Mr. Young, HPC's purview only extends to the exterior of a building. And so all of the work that you propose for the interior, that's not for us to approve. And you can go ahead and start that work without the need for obtaining this commission's approval. So I want to make sure we know exactly which aspects of the application we need to make decisions about as applied to the exterior of the building. Mr. Young, do you want to start in any particular order? I mean, I have questions about the solar panels, I have questions about the windows. Where would you like to start?
Wherever you have questions, go.
Okay. Well, why don't we start with the windows? I believe the application includes a proposal to replace 3 exterior windows on the west facade. Is that correct?
2 windows.
2 windows. Okay.
Mr. Casey, you can, Mr. Young, you can actually share your screen if you'd like to, or if you would prefer. I can pull up documents that you've given to us on the agenda.
You want me to share it on my screen, or you're sharing it on yours?
And you have the option. Yeah, you can share it on your screen if you haven't.
I don't have it up, but I can get it.
I can pull it up. That's okay.
Sure.
All right. Can you see?
I can see, yep. I see, it looks from this drawing like it's only 2 windows, and tell us what you plan to do with those windows. What exactly?
We plan to just split them in half so that the rooms that they correlate to are able to be divided.
Okay. Jaime, do you have a photograph of those windows?
trying to remember where they are. Maybe they are in.
So it should, I can pull it up on mine if you want me to share. I have the full package with the agenda and a note. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, there. So that's a piece of, that's one of the windows there. You can see here, this is the
Right.
sort of rear of the property. So that's one of the windows there, and that's one of the windows there. And I believe this part of the property is actually not historic. So this has
Correct.
been modified.
So what is the plan with respect to those two windows? It's from the exterior. Is it going to look exactly the same?
It will look exactly the same, but for a very slight division in kind, the same way you have the white dividers they're currently showing. It's just going to be in the middle of the window bay rather than one big window bay. So we'll just divide it and we're going to frame between. My contractor should be here. I'm not sure why he hasn't checked in on it. He obviously can.
You have somebody else in the room. I don't know who they are, so
Yeah.
perhaps that's them. It's Michael Calgio.
Yeah, so that's my contractor. He should be here. He should be able to explain more specifically with regards to what the physical work is and what the task is and how it's being separated.
We have Rebecca Young here as well. Do you want to bring her in?
Yeah, that's my wife. She's just it's bedtime for two working parents, so I had to remove myself from them before my kids started screaming.
Okay, so Michael is in.
Mike, if you want to turn on your audio, your mic, and just kind of
Got it.
some specifics there.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
We can.
Yes,
Good
sir.
evening.
Okay, so the plan for the two windows is, so take for instance, in this photo that we're looking at, the top right window. The plan is the rightmost window and the center are going to stay the same. We are going to break the mull from the center to the left, exactly where the pointer is, remove that window, frame appropriately for the partition for the offices, and replace that left window with a similar in kind. So from the exterior, to answer your question that somebody had asked before, how it's going to look from the outside, what Mr. Young said was appropriate. That mull, instead of seeing a mull that is similar between the large center window and the left window, it's just going to be slightly thicker to accommodate for the framing.
Slightly thicker, the word you're using is mull?
That is correct. Anything that joins windows, that is called a mull.
May I just say maybe also mullion?
Mullion, yes.
All
Yes.
right. That's great.
That one I've heard. Thank you, Dan. Okay, so from the outside, it's going to be the mullion on the left is going to be slightly thicker.
That is correct.
That's it.
That is correct.
And then the same on the lower left window.
Correct.
It's just going to be a thicker mullion on the left. And I don't know, what is that material? Fiberglass or?
There's a drawing, if I may suggest, maybe they.
Yeah, I mean, I'm making a bad drawing here, but trying to get a.
Adam, that will address your question.
Well, that doesn't seem especially controversial to me. Does anyone have any thoughts about the proposed window modification?
Well, I had comments or thoughts when I first saw it. We didn't vote on it because the applicant wasn't there, but just some housekeeping things, essentially. To answer your question about the width of the new mullion, it's really two new windows, and there's siding to match existing in between. And it's indicated graphically, and the only thought to cross the T's and dot the I's would be a note, in my view, between the two new windows, just saying siding to match existing. And the only other point would be, I was a little surprised to see the dormer windows, because I wasn't, graphically, you'd almost think they could be new. They look to have muntins on the existing now. I don't even know if they're casements, but graphically, my impression was somebody might interpret that to mean the windows are new, but I don't think, certainly because you have new windows and existing openings without an arrow to it, you were intending to include that. So
Those windows exist as they are. Those are original windows. They're, I don't know, bifold style from the 1830s.
right. So just a note or something, or just the applicant to affirm, or the applicant to affirm that they're not new windows. That's all.
In the top dormer?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's confirmed. They're original. I'm not changing them.
Yeah. Okay.
restoring
That
them.
gets recorded, so that's good.
Does anyone have any other comments about the proposed window modifications?
No, I do not.
Okay. So that's one aspect down. I think I tend to think the group would, unhesitatingly approve that modification. Let's talk about something more difficult, the solar panels. This was not part of the original application. I think this is part of the amendment from later in August. Mr. Young or the contractor, would you care to say something about this aspect of the application?
So this would be on me. Mike is from our general contractor, so happy to answer any questions you have about the solar plan.
Okay. Well, for one thing, it looks to me like the placement of the panels is going to be on the front of the house, the sides of the house, but not the back of the house. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
It doesn't face north. The only side they're missing, Adam, is north, because the sun doesn't hit that very much.
We also have the dormer that creates shadows.
Oh yeah, you have dormer.
I believe there should be an image there that shows the heat mapping of it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, dormer.
So the dormer essentially renders that portion unusable. We also need to have roof access pathway for a fire code.
Oh, by the way, the dormer faces south. Am I wrong? Yeah.
West.
Oh, west rather. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let me be clear about this. In layman's term, the back of the house doesn't have any solar panels in this picture. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And that's the side that faces the river, the west side.
Correct.
Is there a reason why that portion of the roof doesn't have solar panels proposed to be put on it? I mean,
Yeah, just kind of
go ahead.
touching on that was that there's a dormer there. The dormer creates shadows. So when the sun moves throughout the day, the shadows block a lot of that light. So you lose a beneficial value of those panels because they don't have the same amount of daylight hours that it would generate power.
Is it typical to put them on the north side? I'm surprised, but obviously I'm not an expert, but
So
it just seems like
they did a drone heat mapping, and they test every property is a little bit different. It depends on the sloping of the roof, because this is not a particularly high pitch, which means that the sun lasts for a longer window of time. This is not my first solar project. It's actually my third. So I have a bit of an experience with this. So you tend to put it where it's going to reach a certain percentage of efficiency. Generally, we try to shoot for anything above 70% efficiency. And these met those parameters based on the slope and the angle and the fact that we're perched up on the hill. We meet those parameters.
okay.
Are there photographs of the proposed panels in the amended application?
I believe the page above talks, I don't know if it's photographs. Yes, those. They're the kind, they don't have the silver lines throughout. They're just straight pure black. They're like jet black and smooth.
Is this in connection with any kind of solar energy credits or tax abatements? I mean, is regarding your choice to put the photovoltaic, right? create electricity.
Yeah, this is a PV system and it does qualify for federal and state incentives.
Okay. There's no image though of what the house would look like with the panels on it, right? Did anyone do a Photoshop or an elevation drawing or something?
I was not under the belief that that was going to be required. I have images of where it's going on the building and images of the building. Would take a little bit of an effort to get a rendering. That's not something I believe they do.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it is, except imagine instead of blue, it's black. Blue has to do with just the color efficiency. And if you see that, the 76% efficiency is what I was referring to.
Greg, is it accurate to say on the Jaime, can you go up a page, that it looks almost like it does on that smaller picture, just very flat to the roof line?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Over the years, there's been a lot of steps taken to kind of decrease the space between the roof and the panels itself. There has to be a little bit of room so that the airflow allows, but it's less than 6 inches, maybe 4 or 3 inches.
Okay, yeah, that doesn't look bad at all. Thank you.
Jaime, could you scroll to the rendering of the roof with the panels on top? Thank you. All right. Well, one positive from my perspective is it looks like the fewest number of panels are in the front of the house. The looks like the most panels are is it north? I guess north facing. You know, I do wonder if any panels could be put on the rear to reduce or even eliminate the necessity of placing solar panels on that front.
If I understood correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, I did speak to a couple of people, and I believe you were one of the people I had this conversation with, and Jaime as well, that because solar panels are deemed removable from the property, that it's actually not deemed a permanent installation. So I'm not sure why there would be need to move them from to front to the back. I think we would significantly lose efficiency. You can even see in this image where the shadows creep. That's on one side of the day. The other side of the day, the shadows will be on the other side. So if I understand correctly, that this isn't a permanent structure, it shouldn't be a concern to architecturally.
Let me clarify that. So we had a conversation about how it's been examined by the board in the past, but it's ultimately, I think you got to answer the board's questions. So
okay. I did answer the board question. The question was asking me is whether we could move them to the rear, and the answer would be I would lose significant efficiency, which, you know, I'd lose a return on my investment by basically placing panels that would live a decent part of their day in the shadows on both sides.
If I could just add, Adam, I understand your point, but there's also considerations of clearances for access. I think that's part of the village code. You can't just, you know, fill it up in a triangular area that you see on either side of the dormer. There has to be access and clearances. So I could easily imagine that you would never get anywhere near on either side of the dormer the amount of solar that you'd be losing on the front. And if that was your aim, and I can understand that being an ideal situation from someone's point of view, but I can see why the applicant's saying it's just not going to work.
On my personal residence, all my panels are on the rear of the house. If that was an option to me, I assure you I would have taken it.
Mm-hmm.
could you tell me what's going on right here in this part of the roof?
That's an existing skylight.
Right. So I think one of the things, board, you may want to consider here is there are a couple of items. There's the skylight here. And there's a skylight here, which also prevents the ability to use that. And he mentioned it before, but I'm going to repeat it here. There needs to be an access way for people to get onto the roof in case of a fire, and also just to put stuff up. So I believe that access comes through the dormer area, right, onto the roof. Is that correct, or is it through the skylights?
You need to have both. You need to have access through the dormer and also through the exterior of the building. So on the sides of the dormer, I believe one of in my architect's plans shows an access plan.
You can see right here, it shows that roof pathway access in the green hatch.
Mhm.
This is what he was talking about.
Can I ask a question? Is it possible to put the panels on the roof of the dormer? Because I'm just wondering, I don't know what the pitch is, if it's that different from, 3 and 1. Just wondering.
So the dormer is the oldest part of the building.
Okay.
It is the one place that I would want to protect it in its pristine and original position. It is a little bit less secure, and also based on the pitching and the fact that it's elevated, it's not going to get the same sun. So if the sun is in the middle of the day directly over it, you're only getting a portion on either period because it's pitched, as opposed to doing it as a stretched alongside. So I think you would lose efficiency, and it's something I can ask of my solar team, but I honestly think that would be more harmful to the historical and architectural significance to put it on the original dormer, whereas the rest of the space really is more of a modern roof.
Well, I mean, we're trying to protect the historic, it's not just protecting the building itself, but its presence on the street, as its history and that front roof line. It's telling a story of the history of the house, and certainly adding solar panels, it's not as though you can't see the roof anymore and you can't know the history, but it absolutely changes a building. And I'm all for solar panels, but I would wonder if there is a way to move those ones and how much you're going to lose. And because on the sides and on the back, I understand the back's not great for it, but I think just on a very, superficial looking at the building, it does make an impact on the historic nature of it. That's my personal opinion.
May I add or ask Catherine if we could go to the pictures of the building from the
Yeah,
street?
I have one pulled up here that I'm just looking on my phone, but yeah.
Oh, right. So
I mean,
from the
front of
street. Yeah.
front of it though.
Yeah.
That's the neighboring property.
Right.
Right now, I'm trying to see if did you get a picture of the actual property here?
I don't know if this helps, but I'm looking at it on Google Street View.
Oh,
And that's what I have.
Right.
yeah.
And I do notice that the pitch of the roof is quite small. And there is already a skylight there.
Mhm.
I also see, you got some chimneys there on the south side of the building, which are going to throw shadows. So I don't see a lot of wiggle room here to entertain excluding the east side of the building. If you have to put panels on the north with the pitch the way it is, just to catch some sunlight, it's certainly understandable.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you don't really see the dormer from the street.
You can't see the dormer from the street. I'm also going to offer that the shutters are quite dark. So if you've got black panels on the roof, I don't think it's going to contrast very much with the shutters. I mean, it's
Are you saying that's a good thing?
yeah, I'm saying it would be consistent. Yeah, it would certainly be consistent. It's very hard to have solar without some sort of, different look. However, it is reversible from where I sit if a new owner came along and so forth. But I don't think that from my vantage, it would be undermine the significance of the building.
Yeah, and the roof itself is not historically fabricated, right? I mean, it's not like I'm looking at a slate roof or,
No, it's, you got, that's a garden variety asphalt,
right,
It's asphalt and a modern skylight.
right. So the panels aren't going to be hiding something that you could argue would be architecturally significant
No,
to the home.
no.
Historically
no,
significant.
you don't have like European stucco up there or European tile,
think
you know,
the
right?
The distinction is just, you know, and I'm not voting on anything right now. I'm just saying that the distinction isn't that it's going to damage the building or anything. It's, you know, the fabric of the history of Ossining and how much do we want to preserve the building, you know, and how it looked or it's just something to consider because it will change, you know, just how you approach it and what you see. I'm not opposed to any kind of solar energy, of course, and but it's just something to think of because it opens a door for, you know,
This
it's a
is,
tricky one because
Yeah.
you don't want to be against anything environmentally,
Yeah.
you know, friendly, but it's just something to consider. And
If
if
I-
it
if
is
I-
not
if I-
possible to put it on the back and avoid having the facade of the building, you know, changed by that look, then, you know, that's something to consider. But if it was something that could be explored.
Phil was going to say something, then perhaps I could join in after Phil.
I was curious, and forgive me, I should probably know more because I'm a real estate broker, but is there any practical means of putting solar panels in the back of the building, like at ground level, just not even on the building, just connected in some way?
This was actually that was my original dream, was my original hope was to avoid panels on the building.
Yeah.
With
All
that
right. So
being the cost of putting in mounts and the loss of the view from the building, which is one of the quintessential aspects of this building,
Yeah.
just completely wiped away any benefits of that. And trust me, it wasn't a decision I took lightly, and we went through many iterations of the solar, and our focus is 100% on preservation. So the
Right.
fact that we ended up putting panels on the front, it speaks to that, you know, it's of somewhat importance. And if I could add a little bit just to the nature of the historic building, keep in mind, it's so old and so drafty and so poorly insulated that if we were to find the best possible way to make it function in a modern sense, in a way that isn't dilapidated and unused in its current manner, I think solar is the number one priority for us because there's no other way to make this building be efficient enough to compete.
So you did ask Sunrise if something could be not on the building and process of elimination. This was the most.
That was the original plan, correct? I wanted to do
Okay.
a parking canopy in the rear.
It's interesting. It is unfortunate that there's no Photoshop or something with the roof panels on it. You know, but be it as it may be, what's an interesting possible benefit of the solar panels on this elevation is you got a skylight there that just sort of pokes out of nowhere, and it's a modern feature, and you'll be having a lot more glass and reflectivity. And actually, that skylight will just disappear as a sort of a hole in the roof. It'll sort of blend with it. Do you have skylights on the other elevations, or is that the only one?
Not where the panels are. There's only on the top center.
Yeah, I mean, it'll just sort of get lost. I think. I mean, you'd see if you did a Photoshop, it kind of just become lost in it, and you know, maybe look a little bit more in scale with the rest of the roof. That would be another way to look at it.
Actually, just pardon me if I'm off the screen for a second. I'm just going to see if I have any other images from them. I just don't know if they have any renderings. They're more of the same types of just the elevation drawings, not actual images.
I can understand reaction has been expressed, like, you know, to see something, a modern intervention on top of a roof. I can understand it's when it's an historic area. On the other hand, of course, you know, we lost all the original context of that roof long ago. I don't know what it was originally made out of. And, you know, at least, you know, it's a modern energy green saving feature, you know, and so I think you could look at it that it's a respectful modern, temporary in the sense that it could be removed. And it signals that, we're encouraging, solar energy, energy conservation. That's another way to look at it.
And if anybody wanted to see what I don't have a rendering like you asked for, but I do have an image of what the actual panel individually looks like. If somebody would like to see that.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I can share mine here. That's the panel. So there's no silver lines or anything. It's just flush black. And to the point, it would kind of line up with that skylight there. So it would all be kind of almost a seamless flush look.
Yeah, we don't know for sure, but yeah, it'll be within inches of each other. It's not going to be
Right.
flush, I imagine.
And then this is, I mean, if it's
Hey, may I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Can you ask your contractor to make it flush? I mean, if it's I'm assuming it might be lower, but can you try to get them to make it flush? Can you put
So
that?
I don't know how flush it can be, but this might answer in here because this is where you have the bracket. So the bracket's showing about 4 to 4.7 inch gap. I don't believe that can be decreased.
Yeah, it can't be decreased. Maybe the curve of the skylight, it may end up matching it fairly closely. I mean,
Definitely close enough from the naked eye from street view, I would think.
Yeah.
I'll say this, Mr. Young, this commission has approved solar panels on multiple properties in my time on the HPC. And the conversation is and has been always the same. What can be done to mitigate the massing or the placement of the solar panels so as to minimize the visual impact at street level? There's, I think, a consensus on this commission and generally that there is a conflict between placing solar panels on a roof of a home or building, between environmental values and historic preservation values. And this commission has sought to, accommodate the two competing values, environmentalism and historic preservationism. And I wonder if, in speaking to your solar panel contractor, it might be possible to get a different answer about the placement of the solar panels on the front of the house, maybe a reduction in the overall number on the front. Maybe that wouldn't impact efficiency all that much. I think you're at 76%. Perhaps eliminating some and shifting some would bring you down to 70% without the impact of having these modern appliances sitting on the front of the house.
As a 6% loss over a 25-year perspective, I think that's a fairly significant challenge. Whether there's an option or a request that is made of me to seek an alternative drawing, I leave that to the board.
May I just ask, to Adam's point, maybe Adam, if you could consider something, or other people possibly, is there another Google Street View when you're approaching the building so you see a south and a east corner?
I'll
south and east facade?
So I'm gonna try and see what we have here, but keep in mind there's a Ossining Children's Center here now, so
Yeah.
you can't
Okay,
actually.
so like if you're
There's a
approaching the building,
here, but you can kind of.
yeah, you could stop there. Yeah, stop there. I can understand the desire to eliminate the front. I mean, obviously it's the front of the building. I tend to think possibly another view on that is, I think if you were to just put panels on the south and the north side, it would look kind of, someone might feel it's sort of strange. You know, it's not really covering the three sides you can readily see from the street. And you really wouldn't, to the casual observer, imagine that the side facing the river weren't covered because there's no way to see it. But, you know, it also architecturally makes sense. There's no panels there because of the dormer. I wonder whether, so in other words, it's subjective, of course, but I really wonder whether if the panels come off of the front of the house, if, you know, walking on the angle, which is what everybody does, they might wonder why it's missing. I guess, unless, of course, we want to just have people recognize it's the front of the house and that's why it's missing. But, so anyways, I'm looking at it a little differently than possibly other people on the panel.
There, I could be wrong. I'm looking at Google Street View, and 26, which I think is next door, has a pretty large tree. And it's tough to see the north side of the building from there.
You can't. Yeah, I just was, I'm sorry. Did you not see me sharing the screen? Is
I was-
everybody kind of following me here?
I was probably multitasking.
We are, Jaime.
Yeah, we can follow you.
Yeah, so I mean, you can't see it. There's a very large tree. The only thing you can see is the neighboring property. You can't see it at all coming this way. There is also a building here, although it's set back, so you probably can see the front of this property from over here. But this mound of dirt is essentially where the children's center is now. And it's set back a little bit, so you probably can see this view. Essentially, it's more or less in line with what you see here. And then, and of course, you know, if you're right in front of the building, then you can see this.
I have a comment, this is certainly not my area, but if you reduced it, to me, it almost looks like a mistake rather than just keeping it the way it is. Would bring attention to my eyes. I would probably think, what is he doing here? But seeing the full panels, I would understand what you were trying to do in terms of the environment. I think it would almost look a little weird if you had 2 or 3 up there, as opposed to all over. The way I'm looking at it, and Adam, please tell me if I'm stepping out of line. I'm so happy that you're trying to keep the integrity of this building the way it is, outside of the roof, just the building and the thoughtfulness, even though we don't make decisions on the inside of the house, that the roof, the time that we live in now, I see what you're trying to do, and also keeping the integrity of the house outside of the roof. I think you're just trying to be save our environment as well. So that's just my thought. I don't know if you take the panels off the front, does it even make sense to do the project? That's actually my question.
It's not. It loses it without a certain yield power based on the usage of the building. It will cease to become cost effective at that point.
Okay, thank you. That was my long way of getting to that question and having a comment at the
Right.
same time. Is if you reduce it, it doesn't make sense and almost looks like a mistake to me. It's either all or nothing. So, okay, thank you.
I have a quick question for the chair. Is the solar panels on the roof the final part of the application, or is there anything beyond
There
the
are 2
solar
more
panels?
items. Yeah, there are 2 more items.
Okay.
Yeah, so why don't we maybe shelve this piece of the application for a moment and move on to the other aspects of the application. I believe, Mr. Young, you wanted to replace some compressors on the outside of the unit, outside of the building rather. Could you say something about
Yes,
that aspect
correct.
of the application?
You say something in regards to what?
The plans for this photograph, for example.
So these are, I don't know how these were approved. These are residential AC units in a commercial building. So long story short is they can't be there. There's no fresh air component. There's other components missing to these units. So also the split ductless one on the right-hand side is non-functional at all. It's from, I believe, 1988. I don't know how long has not functioned for. So we're replacing them, same layout, just with 3 modern units.
What part of the building is this? What direction is?
The entire building will be, we're keeping the existing ductwork, but the entire building will be,
No,
Yeah.
the compressors, the units.
they can go in any direction.
It's in the back of the building.
They're in the back of the building. Okay, that
Yes.
was my
Oh,
question.
that was.
Yeah, they're in the
All right, so
rear.
you can't see them from the street.
No,
No.
All right, so unless somebody is visiting or trespassing,
Both happen.
yeah.
my only question about the new compressors, Mr. Young, is how tall are they?
Specs should be in there. You'd have to pull it up in there.
But this, I regard this as also a fairly uncontroversial aspect of the application.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
I agree as well.
All right, so that's three aspects. I think, now, was there some proposed work to the roof as well?
Just replace in kind, which I don't know if that's deemed that, I don't know what, if that's deemed regular maintenance for the code or what, but I learned my lesson.
Under normal circumstances, if you're taking a few, I don't speak for the building inspector, so I want to put that caveat out there. But under normal circumstances, this work in kind is just considered a, it doesn't require a special permit by the Historic Preservation Committee. So
I was told it was everything on the exterior, so I wanted to make sure more is more.
To the extent approval is required for replacing asphalt shingles with asphalt shingles, I think this board would not hesitate to approve that. Any other aspects of the application?
that's it.
Okay. Well, just for sake of efficiency, I think, but tell me anybody if I'm wrong, that there really are no objections whatsoever to the compressor replacement or the window modifications. Am I right?
You're right from me.
Yeah.
Right for me.
Yes.
Okay. So the only aspect of the application where there's been some discussion is the placement of the solar panels on the roof. I've expressed some reservations. I always express reservations about placing solar panels on a historic building. But I've listened to the comments of Joyce Cole and others, and folks have made good points. Why don't we take a vote about approving the application in total? And the application, as I understand it, it comprises three aspects: the compressor replacement, the window modifications, and the installation of the solar panels.
I'll make the motion.
Yeah, well, before
Okay.
that, Phil, I'm sorry to interrupt. I mean, Mr. Young, you obviously have put a lot of thought into historic preservation values, and I know because you've corresponded with me that you're interested in pursuing National Register listing. But that said, does anyone have any reservations about the solar panels in particular, other than the sort of general reservations I always express about placing solar panels on a roof? For example, would anyone want the applicant to further discuss with the solar panel contractor alternatives to the placement of the panels? I don't think that's necessary, but is there anyone who thinks a further conversation should happen?
No, I don't.
I don't want to slow this project down for anyone involved, but I will just say for the record that I think we should try to avoid putting solar panels on the front facade of historic buildings in Ossining. And I know that the New York State Preservation Commission has that part of their, their language is avoid that on the front facade. Work it in where you can, but that's like one of their, so, this is, a project that I know wants to get going, but that's my feeling. I wouldn't hold up the whole project for it, but I just wanted to say that.
I just have a point. Some points were raised that might be interesting. And again, I completely understand the conundrum, historical preservation versus environmental considerations. Honestly, we're in favor of both. But an interesting point was raised. Could some of the panels be moved potentially to the back and to that dormer area? Could that be explored to see if you would get a similar amount of solar effectivity, if that's the right phrase, by just exploring that? Or have you explored that?
So the first response I have to that is, I mean, even if you look at the plaque at the front of the building, Ossining's Museum in the Streets, one of its foremost points that it makes is the rear dormer. That is one of the greatest and most beautiful views and places in Ossining to see all the way across the river and beyond the Tappan Zee. I think that it would be heartbreaking to me to turn that dormer, which is kind of like the crown, literally it's like a crown on a building, to then put that and to lose efficiency for the sake of putting it on the most historic part of the building. To me, it feels a little bit, it would be counterintuitive to me in the grand scheme of historic preservation. That being said, I don't know, I haven't done an exact analysis on what the loss of efficiency would be, but it would be to some extent a loss of efficiency. I don't know what that would be. I don't have an answer for that.
With this, and to Catherine's point, I wasn't aware, Catherine, thanks for reminding us about the preservation's recommendation that the front always be left unaltered. Would that just, for discussion, does that affect the probability that you could get a designation or that you can get your tax credits?
As it is, I've yet to be approved for the designation. We've made some strides. We've made some efforts. We were rejected by the state of New York based on just not enough details for the history of the building and the history of the owners. But I don't think that would, given the considerable historic nature of the interior of the building and the people who have owned it, and Joyce and I have worked to some extent on the relationship with Dr. Hill and his management of the building, the incredibly pristine herringbone flooring that he had installed and things like that, that the original 1830 marble fireplaces, I don't think that the front portion of putting solar would be the item that makes or breaks this building's historical significance.
Okay.
I have a few things to add. I appreciate everybody's comments and listen to them. I've gained a lot of information. I too am all for solar panels and for saving the environment. And again, does having solar panels and having the existence of a house that has this historical significance, how do you weigh that? And I'm certainly in a conundrum in regards to the panels on the front, but I do see all of the discussion in regards to the pros and cons of where to put the panels.
Is there a precedent, by the way, the school that we had talked about months ago that, Adam, you had brought up, they changed the storefront. It used to be a school, and I don't know what it is now, the white public school on Croton.
The
Washington School.
Thank you. Does that have solar panels?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's solar on all sides, I
But
think.
that's not designated. That property.
Oh, well, that's true. It is.
I thought it was a
Wait a
roof
minute.
feature, but I could be wrong about that.
Oh,
I'm sorry, hi, guys. Hi,
Hi, Dana White.
I'm just gonna pop in here. You're talking about on the 81 Croton?
I think so. I can't remember.
Those are
I go by it and,
Those are skylights for the old gym.
oh, all right. So it doesn't have solar
It
panels.
doesn't have solar panels.
And I went to gym in that gym in kindergarten and first grade before they closed that place.
Hmm.
All right.
Anyway, I'll
Well,
go.
There they are.
Yeah, I guess I just forgot what I was looking at. You know, in a way, they could have been solar panels. It's kind of funny.
It was pretty hot up there, let me tell you.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Still hot
Well,
up
greenhouse effect. Is it still, I can imagine, right?
there. Mhm.
Adam, can we call a vote?
yeah. Well, let me, first of all, let's do a time check. Sorry.
7:50.
So I wonder if tonight we could, because I think it's unanimous agreement that the compressor replacement and window modifications are completely unproblematic. I wonder if we could, as a group, vote to agree on that, and maybe vote to agree on sort of a provisional solution with regard to the solar panels. And maybe that is, to entrust, one or two of us to have a further conversation with Mr. Young. And please tell me if you disagree, to see whether there might be an alternative arrangement of the panels such that the placement on the front can be avoided. But it's hard to take the group's temperature on that.
Adam, can I chime in for 1 second, if
Go
I
ahead.
might? The applicant, I think, has indicated they have looked at alternatives. They have mentioned this a number of times. I know that we have circumstances where this board has, in essence, if you want to call it, commissioned two members to talk to someone on a particular aspect of an application. In my own opinion, and this is the board's decision, I recognize that, but in my own view, this does not fit within that category. The applicant has already indicated he has spoken to the people at Sunrise. He has explained why they can't go on the north side. He's discussed about, the skylight area. So I think that basically calling it a provisional COA with regard to the solar is not, that's not this case, because he's already basically done all that lifting to this
Well,
point.
see, I'm not quite hearing that. I just want to make sure, Mr. Young, have you, had that conversation fully with the solar panel contractor?
Yes.
Okay. That
We
being the
looked
case,
at
then,
at least 3 different iterations.
okay. With that being the case, then I agree with Corporation Counsel on this. This is the best proposal we've got from a historically preservation-minded applicant. And so I think we can do a straight up or down vote. So Phil, you want to renew that motion?
Yes, I would move that we vote to approve the application as it's been presented today.
Anyone second that motion?
A second.
I guess I'll.
So with the motion seconded, the vote would be to approve the application as is, without any changes or conditions. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So, Mr. Young, the way the process works now is Corporation Counsel will draft a certificate of appropriateness. and it'll come to me for signature and go back to the planning department once I sign it. And what happens after that, I'm not sure, but Jaime might jump in at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you can do now, Mr. Young, have you already put in some of your building permit components?
It's fully completed and submitted.
Okay.
It's stalled pending violations.
Give me a call in the morning and I'll give you an ETA and what to expect the resolution. And I'll talk to Joe in the morning, let him know the result of this conversation, and that should be it.
Is it okay if I ask a couple questions?
About what? Yeah.
I just a few questions.
So I'd rather you wait till the morning. We have other items on the agenda tonight. And so you can call me first thing in the morning.
I wanted a couple items on the record just because just going through the process, if that was okay with the group. If not, you know.
If you could be brief, I've lost track of time. It's almost
Yes,
8.
I can be very
Go ahead,
quick.
Mr. Young.
Very quick. Is there a publicly available list of anything from the Historic Preservation Committee with regards to what may or may not be approved and what is generally approved? Does that exist?
You can FOIL records. You can submit a request for information.
For prior, but a list
yeah.
of generally approved changes does not exist, correct?
No, we go by basically the application that comes before, and you're welcome to FOIL any of those, but we don't have a list that says XYZ is approved. There's
Right.
no,
Okay.
there's no standard for it.
There is an architectural design take a look at, and that gives good guidance on
Right.
what you
But
can
there's
do.
no list created and provided publicly by the HPC.
No,
Okay, and if I just might ask, why was there no meeting in August?
because all of the land use boards did not meet in August. They all took the month of August off.
Okay. And when is there a way, like a general way that people can request special meetings if the timing is a little bit challenging? Is there any sort of
Well, that's a
process?
request. That is a request that would be made to the planning director, who would then follow with the land use chair. It requires notice, and so there are various ways that it can be done, but there's a process to do it, and that's not there's a process, but it's let me put it this way: it's rarely done. But you got to start with the planning director, and then we go to the chairs to see if we can do it, if we can get a quorum, and then we have to deal with notice issues. And now, given that the governor is not going to be extending the executive order, as of tomorrow, all of the land use board meetings, including that of this HPC, will go back to live effective next month.
Oh, and right, okay.
That's it for my questions.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Young.
Thank you.
Good luck. Okay, 2 more items on the agenda. I had asked Stuart in an email some time ago. Stuart, don't worry about it if
No, it's okay.
lost track of it, but I had asked for an update about a church that the Ossining High School, I believe, is already closed on and plans to renovate. And I believe a secret process is already underway.
We did get, Adam, a couple of months back from the, I guess, the architect for the school district, essentially that they were starting the process with regard to that building. There was no, as far as I know, no objection that was put in, at least from the village's end, if I recall. It is a secret process, but it's being done through the school district. So the village is not involved to that extent, other than, permits may have to be obtained, but it's not a, the village.
I don't even need to get building permits.
Okay, so there don't need to be building permits. The village, I think, would be considered an interested party for purposes of secret, but other than that, what the status of that is right now, I don't have an answer for you. We've gotten enough, other than the initial mailing from the applicant's architect. Nothing else has crossed our desk.
But there's typically a lead agency, no?
Well, that would be the school district.
Yeah, so the school district, if the school district is going to do the work, then the lead agency, I guess in this instance would be the Board of Ed, because they have to
Yeah.
do the money, they have to pay for it. Because it's the Board of Ed, they do not have to follow the local building code. So they don't have to file anything with the building department. Therefore, there's no approval authority by any agency here in the village, which means that if the Board of Ed thinks we're an interested agency, then they could let us know. But they may not think that we're an interested agency. They may consider us sort of nothing. And in that sense, they're not really obligated to follow anything but what state law requires. So involved agencies would be if they have to go to the state to get approvals,
Right.
then they might be involved. Other than that, it's probably the Board of Ed. So they may do a lead agency notice, but if there's only one lead agency, they can just declare lead agency. I'm not 100% familiar with this particular project because we haven't been noticed, unless you have, Stuart, but the planning
I
project.
got, as I said, there was a one notification a couple of months back, but the BOE would be the lead agency. The only really directly involved agency, other than the Board of Education, would be most likely the State Education Department, because they're the ones who would have to ultimately give approval for certain aspects of the project. But as Jaime correctly points out, there is no permit process. We have this with Sing Sing Prison. We don't permit them. We don't have anything. They can redo any part of that building that they want without any approval. And actually, they don't even have to let us know at all, but they do generally sometimes as a courtesy. Basically, it's the same here, but we can ask as to what the status is, but from an environmental or construction aspect, it rests with the school district and ultimately with the State Education Department, but there's no, it's not even inspected by the village. So we don't inspect it, because it's going to basically be a school district building, so it's run through the State Education Department. We have nothing to do with it.
Yeah, this is interesting and something I'll have to give some more thought to, because the church is, right smack in the middle of our historic district, or it's certainly on the border of it. And I think this commission would have an interest in ensuring that building is treated in a historically appropriate way in the course of these renovations. To the extent we can get some more information about the secret process.
I can inquire, sure. I'll find out.
At the least, as an agency of the village, we should have an opportunity to weigh in on any proposals for that building.
No problem.
Tyson, what's the CEQA? What is that, the acronym?
State Environmental Quality Review Act.
That's right.
So that's.
With a Q, I thought maybe you were saying something with the C.
Nope, that was it.
Okay.
And speaking of SECRA, if anyone wants to learn more about it, this is a good reminder about the credits that we're supposed to satisfy, the 4-hour training credits before the end of the year. There are trainings offered on SECRA, I think through the New York State Local Governments Division. Google SECRA and local government and Department of State, you'll likely come upon a training.
Okay.
Next up on the agenda is local landmarking. It's getting late, but I had in mind a proposal that one of you had raised with regard to a possible district in the Station Plaza area, sort of an area that's been historically very significant for the African American community here in Ossining. I'll just offer this, we've been on some landmarking adventures over the last few years, and it's a time-consuming, labor-intensive process that often meets with vicious resistance. But it's all we've got to try to protect districts and buildings, and so I always think it's worth giving a try to. But unless any of you want to speak up further about that particular proposal, we can table this discussion for next time, or talk about it a little bit more now.
Adam, I know it's getting late, so I would just say something really quick. I've done a lot of research on that street and the contribution of the Black community. If any of you want me to share it with you, it is extensive. So I'll leave it at that. It's getting late. But Adam, could you go over the Black Church grant? Because I do want to update you.
I'm sorry, if I could just interrupt. Yeah, it is getting late, but maybe to expedite or to help what we're going to be thinking about at the next meeting, maybe Adam, you could send out some of what you're thinking about. Maybe it would give us all time to walk down there again. I'm down there a lot anyway, but and maybe just if anybody has any thoughts on things we could potentially be thinking about or structures we could be looking at, that might help. And then the history that Joyce, you said you have, would there be a way of sharing that with the committee here? And then maybe that would be a good basis to have a more productive conversation at our next meeting.
Sure.
Very much agreed, Stephen. Joyce, I've sort of added you've come up with the idea possibly of doing a district designation down by Station Plaza. I myself would love to see the Quimby Street structure. I think it was a warehouse. I'm not sure what it's used for these days. Landmarked.
I don't think it's used for anything these days.
And maybe I can specify in the agenda for next time that, we can talk about those two properties, or district and property in some more detail. Good suggestion, Stephen. All right, with that, with our having reached the agenda a little bit later than usual, I wanted to share some personal news. I have tendered my resignation from the HPC. I intend to serve on the HPC and as chair through the end of this year to allow time for this group, which I care about a lot, and the village to figure out, how to who's going to be the next chair and who's going to replace me. My intention is to step down altogether. I'm talking to you now from my job, which has kept me here late. It's a newish job, and the demands of the job have become such that giving as much time and energy and effort to this commission, which this commission deserves, has become just too difficult, unfortunately, for me to keep up. Yeah, you're talking to me in the Bronx right now. That's where I am. So it's with a lot of regret that and with a lot of thought and soul searching that I ultimately decided it is probably in the best interest of the commission that I step down. And I will do so at the end of this year. Well, that's that.
Oh.
But please, I invite any of you to reach out to me between now and our next meeting. And hopefully this next meeting will not run as long as this one. Thank you, as always, Stuart and Jaime, for being here and participating, contributing so much to these meetings. It's been a great 5.5 years.
You know, I just have to say that my observations are you've done an excellent job and it's been
Yeah.
excellent leadership. So thank you, but I know we'll have an opportunity to do that before the end of the year. Just a sort of a housekeeping thing. So our next meeting is going to be in person, and I assume it's where we used to be meeting before. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Where is that? Because I've only been Zoom.
It's going to be the Operations Center, which is on Route 9A. It's the conference room, which is on the first floor. You make a right, second door on your right after you make that is the big conference room, and that's where you will all be. And it will be, we will still allow participants, meaning applicants, to appear via Zoom. And just so you know, the way that the Board of Trustees adopted, they changed the local law and they changed procedures. What you need to have is a quorum present live. So if for some reason one of you is ill or has to take care of something and wants to attend remotely, you're allowed to do that, okay? But what you can't do is essentially say, well, I'm not going to be there live tonight, so I'm just going to be elsewhere. You have to have a quorum live. Now, the interesting thing, the way the law is written, if you're live at different locations, as long as you have a quorum among those locations, that works. But generally, that's not what's going to occur. So for this board, that means at the Ops Center, you're generally looking, you got to have 4. If you had someone who's somewhere else, then that person can be elsewhere. But it's important that you have the 4 because those are the 4 who need to be there. And what that means is that the location has to be open to the public, which it will be. Doesn't mean the public's going to attend. My guess is that the public will probably still appear if they do via Zoom. We are going to make it clear to applicants, it's much preferred that you go by Zoom because you can share screens and everybody can see things. But for the board, we will be going back to live. As I said, unless within the next few hours the governor changes, but every indication is that she is going to lift all those requirements. So,
Okay. So in other words, four people have to be live.
4 people
And
must be live.
Others can attend on Zoom and still vote and participate.
Well, but
4 have to be physically present.
But the point about the others, if they're not there, there has to be a specific reason why they're not there. In other words, they can't just decide we're not going to be live that night because so if there's, as I said, if you're traveling, if you're caring for a sick child or doing some other, that's a reason. But it can't just be, well, I'd rather be Zoom tonight. That's not going to work. And that does affect how the vote goes and everything like that. So, but that'll start. Actually, it starts as early as tomorrow night with the zoning board meeting, but it will continue after that because the governor, as I said, will not, from what I understand, will not be extending it. So it will be at the Operations Center. It will be noticed. You'll all get notice about that. And we'll go back to, except Mary Kay for you, it will go back to how it was before March of 2020. My goodness, it's been a long time. But that's what that's where we are with regard to that. And if you feel comfortable and you're live and you want to wear a mask, absolutely feel free to. There's no requirement, but you certainly may. We'll try to set the room up as best we can, but again, recognizing that the public will be there. My guess is most applicants, as I said, will do it via Zoom because it just makes life a lot easier. And as Jaime and I have discussed, we're certainly going to impress that upon any of the applicants for planning and zoning to make it clear that we would really like it if you would continue to go by Zoom. And most of them, I'm sure, will be very, very accommodating in that regard. So
Okay.
that's what we're going to be going back to.
If there's a minute left, Adam, should we just inform the board, unless they already know what happened with the house, 1 Liberty Street, 1 Rockledge, from July?
Very briefly, Dan and Dan put in a lot of work to make this happen. He got, this is the property at 1 Rockledge Avenue. We sort of voted to delegate authority to me and Dan to give the thumbs up to or down to different roof materials, synthetic materials. And Dan did really a remarkable job of very quickly getting actual samples in hand. I was out of the state at the time. Dan went to the homeowner's property and met with them, held up the different samples, sent me pictures, and we ultimately agreed on a synthetic cedar shake roofing material for that property. And it took a lot of work on Dan's part, especially. So Dan, thank you. And I think the result is good. There was not a slate roof on that house, and we found a way of replacing more or less in kind what was there and had been there, which is a cedar shingle roof.
Well, thanks for mentioning that, Adam. And part about my effort, it wasn't that much, but thank you. We're in private, right? There's no public access right now to this?
No, it's a public meeting right now. So if someone wanted to zoom in, they could.
Okay.
That said, I would make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting until our October meeting. Someone care to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Second.
We're all in favor, I'm sure, right?
Jaime, just one thing, and you may just want to check. I think that October 10th, which would be, oh, actually, my apologies. You guys are the first Monday of the month. That'll be October the 3rd. So we're good. October 10th happens to be Columbus Day celebration, so I didn't want to get you guys messed up. October 3rd, next meeting of the HPC.
Okay.
See you all. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
You
Good
all.
night.